Are you ready to embark on a journey of success? To discover your true potential in the untold stories of careers in life sciences? Welcome to PATHFINDER by the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. With your host, Tommy Soares, discover the untold stories of industry scientists and unveil the secrets to excelling in your career. Thank you for joining us once again, and remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Pathfinder podcast. Today, we're thrilled to introduce Dr. Kortany Baker, a recent PhD graduate from Purdue University's Department of Biochemistry, now serving as a clinical project manager at Med Institute in West Lafayette. Dr. Baker's journey is as unconventional as it is inspiring. Despite facing early obstacles that led to a temporary college withdrawal, she raised 2 children independently while working at Applebee's. Her determination shone through as she pursued her undergrad, conducted research, and worked as a teaching assistant. During her time at Purdue, Dr. Baker's innovative research introduced Galleria melonella larvae as an infection model, a breakthrough that has since been adopted by fellow researchers, and her dedication both to her studies and education earned her an outstanding graduate student teaching award from the College of Agriculture. Join us in this episode as we delve into Dr. Kortany Baker's unique path, her impactful research, and the mentors who helped her shape her remarkable journey. Welcome, Kortany. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. I am so excited to hear your story.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I'm very excited to share my story. Hopefully it will inspire some other future scientists. So
I have no doubt it will, because it seems like quite an adventure and quite a trajectory to get to where you are today. And I want to hear all about it. Can you take us as far back as you want to go? And then maybe we can go from there. I'll ask you a few questions as we go along too.
all right, sure. Yeah, let's just go all the way back. So I just want to say that I have had some amazing teachers all the way from elementary school through graduate school. And I've always loved school. I always excelled. And I always changed what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a teacher or a doctor or anything. But then in 9th grade, I actually had a biology teacher who I'm still in contact with today, Mr. Parsons. He told me I should try to go to this biology camp and over the summer. And so I was like, that sounds great. I went and I loved it. We did real experiments with real science equipment. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to research. So then I finished out high school, some more great teachers, and I went off to college. Well, that first year of college, a lot of life got thrown at me. And I struggled a lot, and I essentially flunked out. So there is hope after failing some. And after leaving school, and I was dealing with just a lot. And then within 2 years, I actually had 2 beautiful little girls. So in my early 20s, I dropped out of school. I had 2 kids that I was raising on my own, and I was working at Applebee's, which my Apple buddies were amazing. It really takes a village. They were there every step of the way. When I decided to go back to school, it was great covering shifts, helping with the kids. It was a lot doing homework and trying to work and everything. And between my family and my friends, I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So undergrad was hard. I kept saying, oh yeah, I'm going to get this degree in biochemistry and I'm going to go off to grad school. And I think it was just because it sounded good. But again, I had some wonderful professors. So at IUK, Dr. Kassam actually asked me to research with him, and my mind was kind of blown. I'm like, oh, me? And so I started researching with him, and we actually published together 3 times. And I also started researching in a biochemistry lab with Dr. Masuda. And she took me to my first conference. And when I went to the conference, I just knew I had to figure out a way to get into this world as soon as possible. And I told them, I'm like, I want to go to grad school, but I have these little kids. It probably needs to wait until, they're older and stuff. And they're like, you're doing so much right now. Why not just do it now? And they helped me. They helped me write my letters, apply, everything. And I'm from Kokomo, so I'm not very far from Lafayette. And so we are so lucky to have Purdue basically in our backyard, this amazing school. And so I actually went to a grad symposium at Purdue just to look at all the schools in the Midwest because I wanted to stay close to family. And through there, I actually applied for Purdue, never thinking I'd get in. And then they interviewed me. It's one of the most exciting days of my life and scariest. And I interviewed at the Department of Biochemistry and I fell in love because I went to undergrad at this small school in Kokomo, a satellite campus. And then I was at this giant campus with all these resources, but this department was just like this little home. And it was wonderful. Everybody knows each other. There's so many mentors in the department. And I joined, and that was that. So I actually joined the lab of Dr. Scott Briggs. When I started grad school, I was terrified. I didn't tell anybody about my children because I thought that people wouldn't be okay with that and stuff. And it was a big secret. And I was terrified. A couple weeks in, when people found out that I was a single mom and everything, it was the complete opposite. They were just wowed and impressed. And I was in classes and stuff. There was a couple of times I had to bring the kids to a class and they just hung out, and everybody was just so supportive. And then I just got to be me. And that's where the larvae came in. So in my lab, they had always worked on baker's yeast, and they had just transformed over to a yeast pathogen when I started. It's called Candida glabrata. And since everything was always done in baker's yeast that doesn't hurt anybody, we never needed a model organism to test it in. But now that we were working with the pathogen, we needed to show survival somehow. And actually, for a school project, I found out about these larvae that people had been using them in Europe frequently to test bacteria. And I asked if I could try it, and he said sure. And so I went to a bait shop, got some larvae they usually use for fishing, and I started growing them in the lab myself and injecting them, and it turned into a whole thing. I was kind of like the larvae girl. And that ended up being my thesis, and I graduated doing research on that, and it was just an exciting time. Yeah.
So cool. I love that whole story. First of all, no wonder people are so impressed and want to help you, because it is extremely impressive to hear how you and I know there were a lot of people along the way that guided and provided advice and so on, but Kortany, this was you. and you did it all. And how could we not all be in awe of your amazing feats here of being a single mom of two, going through and being determined to get into this world of science just from the exposures that you had. And so you tell us a little bit about this bio camp, because I've always been inspired. When I was first starting grad school, I said, oh, we need to make a bio camp. Tell us the impact of this, because you say, okay, this was the first exposure and that you wanted to be in it. What was it like? Was it a day camp or was it a sleepover camp? What were the activities like?
So it was a week-long camp, and we stayed in dorms. And so it was my first time on my own as 14. And so we'd get up, and it was we went to lectures, and we then would go do experiments. I remember extracting my own DNA and then running it on a gel. And we got to meet some experts in fields. And we worked on a cadaver, which that was an experience at 14. And just being treated like college kids basically at such a young age, and being taught to think and asking our opinion. And it was just absolutely amazing. And that hands-on experience was so important to me. And so I have always tried to work with schools and daycares. And and even my kids, showing them just cool science experiments, because science is hard sometimes, but if you get past all the words and the studying, it's so cool. It's super cool.
So cool. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I love the early impact that an impression that it had on you, right? Like at 14, extracting DNA, running your own gels and stuff like that. And maybe, as you said, that they treated you in a way that maybe you had not been treated before, which was, okay, well, the science is about people and ideas and innovations and people that bring innovations, right? And what we can do to solve these problems. But it must have been also quite something to be exposed to the dorm setting. And so was it here at Purdue or was it in Kokomo?
It was actually at IU down in
Oh,
Bloomington.
awesome. Awesome. And it was a week long. Oh, so cool. And then you went and you said you had experiences at the university in Kokomo that exposed you, but it was really this event of going to the conference and like realizing, oh my gosh, what's going on here? What is this world of the conference? And what are people doing? Tell us what was so impressive about that.
Well, so I was at a small school and we had research going on, but I mean, we had one professor per subject basically, and we had 3 or 4 research labs, which I loved my school. But it's just resources are harder to come by. So when I went to this conference, it was a national conference. This was in Wisconsin, and I was hearing about work in science from all over the country, and my mind was just blown. I was taken so far out of my element, and just to hear about all of these different research projects going on, and there were people like me like just presenting, and it was just crazy for me. And I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to find out new information and present it to the world, and that was really when I knew I had to figure out a way to get to grad school.
So inspiring. My gosh, what a way to have this beacon of light just open up for you and say, this is where I want to go. But so, okay, so but then life hits you, right? And you are faced with the reality. And many people say, well, life is about 20% of what happens to you, but 80% of how you take it and what you do with it. So tell us about your, at least from my perspective, your 80%. And then what was the 20% that happened to you and how did you take it?
So, well, that first year out of high school, that first year in school, it was just rough. I took way too many credit hours, and I was working 2 jobs on top of that. And then I had my first major loss. My grandma passed, and that was just, it pushed me over the edge. It was too much. And I did let go for a little bit. I was always the straight A student, and I was in all the activities and the sports and everything. And I just broke down for about a year, and that year a lot happened. 2 babies. But then those babies changed my life. So I hear all the time, how did you do it? And I said, how could I not? Like I brought these 2 little people in the world, and I knew I had to do better. So they were 1 and 2 when I enrolled back in school, and now they're teenagers, and they have supported me this whole way as well. But so I just looked at them, and my parents were always wonderful. My grandparents have always been wonderful. And that's why the loss of my grandma just was a lot. But I did, I said, we're going to do this. And I took it one day at a time, and I did it.
That is awesome. You did do it, and you did it in a marvelous way. Look how far you've come with your determination. And I am so sure that those 2 girls look at you in inspiration, like we're all looking at you now and saying, my gosh, if Kortany can do this, I can do more than what I've been doing, because you must have superated so many challenges and so on. And what a great way. So going back to school, was that strange? Was that, and you I mean, before going to grad school, but you went to back into the University of Kokomo, is that right?
So I actually first went back to Ivy Tech just to kind of
Okay.
get my feet wet again because it was a big jump to
Okay.
the worlds I was like hopping from. And so I went there to get a couple of the electives out of the way, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I can. So then I
Yes.
transferred from there to IUK,
Okay.
and that's when I got started back into my science classes and everything. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that, Kortany, because I think, there could be viewers that are maybe in a similar situation and that they're thinking about going back to school because they've left for a little bit, or, they needed to take a pause, a break. Um, was that a good way to do it, do you think, going through Ivy Tech? Tell us a little bit about how it helped you, and or maybe not. I mean, what did you see it as a beneficial time that you spent there? We don't need to be bad spoken about
Oh,
Ivy
of
Tech.
course.
I admire them so much, and I'm wondering about your trajectory, as being probably a significant, great way of reintroducing yourself back into the academia things, right? The studying and the homework and all of that stuff.
So since then, a lot of things have changed, but Ivy Tech offered a lot more online courses than IUK back then.
Mhm.
So that's one thing because I was still working full time. So online courses were very helpful for me. Um, my only disclaimer is to read the fine print. So I didn't realize some of my classes wouldn't transfer one for one. They transferred as electives.
Mm.
So I had to retake some at IUK, which was okay. I loved my time there and it was all worth it. So I graduated with about 170 credits with a lot of electives.
Wow.
But it's okay. It was like it did let me get my toes wet. Going in with all those online classes really helped me get still be able to work for as long as I could. Because then going into the science courses, I needed to be in person.
Mhm.
Um, even well, things are just so different now. You can do so much more online now. But yeah, I'm totally okay with the journey I took to get here. Everything fell into place just as I ever could
That's
hope. So.
good. And did you see it as a good springboard? Like, I mean, what I think, there's so much importance there about getting back into the momentum and rhythm of, school. And it's almost a shame because people think that once they graduate, that's it. No more school ever again for me. But that's not the case, right? And that shouldn't be the case because we should be using the way that we were taught to learn to continue learning.
My big thing for anybody going back is just I was so intimidated. Try not to be intimidated. Any way you go in, um, there's resources. There's if you're a parent, there's other parents. If you're working during the day, there's other workers. Um, and just take on what you can, and but there's other people in your situation. So finding people like you to go through it with is, I would say, probably the best way to handle these. And um, but yeah, whether you're going into a like just even a smaller community college like Ivy Tech, or a satellite campus, or I've even met non-traditional students coming into Purdue, and just take on what you can. And there's always, so like I said, I basically flunked my first year.
Yeah.
So going in, I was at IUPUI. So going in, I had to sign an agreement saying, I'm going to do better. and and that takes in, I mean, so took that into account too. And so then I started talking more with advisors and my professors to make sure I stayed on track and I was doing well, because it was just so more important for me to do well. So just talking, if you let people know your situation, I promise they're going to try to work with you. And so it's just possible. So just don't close in on yourself. There's people out there to help.
Agreed. And I love your comment because it's so true, right? You just need to stick your neck out a little bit, look around and talk to people, ask questions.
Yes.
How did you find I really like your recommendation too of finding people like you that might be in a similar situation or that you can relate to and they can relate to you. Um, how do you find those people? Was there a club for parents, adult or non-traditional students?
So the big thing is just to speak. So I was I would hide like in the corner of the classroom and just keep to myself. I don't know why I was so nervous for so long in school, because it was always my element. And so coming back, I just felt weird because I had
Yes.
left it, right?
Yeah.
And so but once you start speaking to people, you realize there's so many things that you could share. And my big thing at Purdue was there was 6 of us who came in at once into the Department of Biochemistry. And I just refused to even speak to anybody. And finally, one person who is my absolute best friend now forced me to speak to her. And so I just kind of started talking to her and share a little bit of my life. And she was like, wait, what? You have kids and you're doing this? What? And then I was just like, I'm terrified. I know nothing. Everybody here knows everything. I shouldn't be here. I don't belong. And she was like, I don't know anything either. And we started talking to other people, and everybody was terrified. And I had no idea. And so that actually led me, once I got more comfortable in the grad school, I spoke to some professors, and we actually got a mentoring club together for the department. So that way, first years could be coupled up with a senior student, so they can know that none of us know anything.
Anything.
and and so that hopefully they'd be more comfortable and be more successful in the department.
Yeah, I really like that, and it's so it's reality
Mm-hmm.
that we all carry a little bit of this imposter syndrome, and you're like, what am I supposed to know? Am I not supposed to know? Like, what am I supposed to know?
Yes.
And how much of it? And it's so real as a culture for undergrads and then the newest grad students. Tell us a little bit about your application process. You had to interview and then but you knew you wanted to go into biochemistry. Did you know it was Scott Briggs' lab that you wanted to go into, or you knew that biochemistry was it because you had met some of the other faculty? Who was department head at the time? Do you remember?
Mm-hmm. So when I interviewed, Clinton Chapel was department head, and then
Okay.
the year I started, Andy Messakar was the department head. So
Okay.
when I interviewed, uh, so really Purdue was my long shot. I know there's wonderful science programs at Purdue, and which I never gave myself enough credit. I did get great grades. I researched, I published. I was just, I just didn't never gave myself enough credit. But so I remember getting the email saying I got an interview, and the first thing I did was call one of my professors. So I was like screaming. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got an interview at Purdue, and that day was nerve wracking. We go and talk to all the professors. There was a couple labs that I was very interested in, but it seemed, I think, well, it was everybody in my cohort were interested in those labs.
Yes.
Um, and so, and you do rotations your first year as a student. So you pick the labs you want to go in, and then a student is placed in each lab for 8 weeks. And then you do 3 of those and you pick your lab.
Yes.
And so, so Scott Briggs, I actually hadn't heard about his research until our departmental retreat. And I have always been super fascinated by drug resistant bacteria. I don't know why. I love those movies where they take over, and I've always wanted to help cure those. And so when he presented his research that he was moving into a pathogen, I'm like, oh, that is cool. And so I rotated in his lab, and the project that ended up being my thesis, it just took off. Like I was able to make these genetic mutations and everything in these short 8 weeks, and I had
Awesome.
yeah, it just felt like that was where I was supposed to be. And my other two rotations, I learned a lot from. I enjoyed them, but I knew that that's what I was supposed to work with. My whole life, it's almost been guided, I feel like, by my feelings, and I knew that's what I was supposed to do. So
That's great. I love the instinct, feelings that you talk about, because it seems like you've been sniffing out great opportunities, and when you see a good opportunity, you go after it. I wonder, um, you know, are there things that you did that prepared you for that lab in Scott Briggs' lab, and the type of work that you were doing? I know you speak a little bit about the Galleria Melonella
mhm.
larvae, and that you had read about them. But were there other things that you think, I mean, because to get going so quickly and make constructs and mutations and stuff like that, I mean, you must have been quite comfortable in the lab manipulating DNA and doing that kind of molecular biology work, no?
Actually, so as an undergrad, the research we did, not most of it didn't apply to my thesis because we just didn't have the equipment to do it.
Mm.
Um, so really, like, interest can go a long way. I was in there and I was so excited. And I just loved it. And I had a wonderful graduate student who was mentoring me. And
Yeah.
I listened and I wrote it down and I tried it and it worked. Not that was just the rotation, but I had a lot of things that didn't work. uh, but yeah, and starting in that lab, there actually wasn't any funding when I started.
Right.
And so which was fine. So I was told, it's going to be more work, you're gonna have to TA some, which I love teaching, so that wasn't a big deal. And we had to find ways around, we couldn't do the expensive experiments right then, and that's where the larvae came in. They're like $5 a bucket, and then you feed them wheat bran and you can grow them in the lab. And
Nice.
so really it was just my love of science. And I learned the protocols and I just didn't give up. There's one
Nice.
construct it took me a year to make, trying over and over and over and over, and it finally worked.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's that kind of determination. And my goodness, all along with the kids, tell us a little bit. So you opened up to this lab mate, you told her your story, and they also revealed the same thing, that we don't know anything, but you also had like two babies, two kids, and that must have been a little bit different than the rest of the crowd you were with. But you said that they were supportive, that they were impressed.
So supportive. They actually they didn't like to complain around me anymore because I was like, no, 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 it's okay. We all have our own battles. And
Right.
my poor friend, her mom would say, well, Kortany can do it, so you can do it.
That's right.
But no, they were absolutely wonderful. And I mean, my children grew up with them, and how lucky are my kids to grow up with these amazing role models in their lives. And I mean, I was most of my friends weren't from, none of them were from Indiana. Some were from across the ocean. One was from California.
Yes.
So since I had the family, mine was the gathering house for holidays and feasts
Awesome.
and everything. And so we were just one big family, and that went through grad school together. And without them, I know I couldn't have done it. So that's why just people are so important. They're very important.
And your network, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, the people are so important. It many times, and I've been on this kick lately, is many times when we get a problem, when we encounter a problem, it's natural for all of us to say, oh, how am I going to solve this problem? But what we should really be asking is, who is going to help me solve this problem? Tell us a little bit about the who's in your lives, these mentors, and you've told us a little bit about a few who's, and like me, and that's why I'm so excited that you mentioned your ninth grade teacher. That I have a Mr. St. Lawrence, and he was my ninth grade teacher, and he inspired me totally just by learning metabolism, right? Like, oh, here we go. Gluconeogenesis and the metabolic pathways. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's awesome. Tell us a little bit about all these mentors that you mentioned.
Of course. So Rick Parsons, my ninth grade teacher, he still celebrates me and will post great things that I do. And
I hope
he
he's
was just,
watching.
I'm sure he will. Yes. And
Awesome.
he was always so excited about science, and he was an environmentalist, and he still to this day goes out and helps clean and gets groups out there. And he's just so passionate about everything he does. And then throughout high school, I had just other amazing science teachers, and then my undergrad professors um, who just told me I could. And I still am in contact with Dr. Kassam and Dr. Masuda. They still check on me. I get invited to go speak to IUK students. And while I was there, they let me teach. They let me help teach middle school camps, and they let me use supplies to take to daycares and teach kids. And everyone I had along the ways loved my children. And then at grad school, along with my PI, I had amazing committee members, Dr. Joe Ogus, Dr. Ann Kirkmeyer, and Dr. Tony Hasbin, so supportive. I just can't believe the support from all around. The whole department knew who my kids were. They would ask how we were all doing.
Yes.
Just so much support. And I couldn't have asked for it to be any better.
Yeah, and as you said it, it's almost like they become your family, right? They become part of your development and support group. I love that you still keep in touch with them, and that you've made that effort to continue to and it seems that they've reciprocated that as well with you. Tell us a little bit, did you get to explore some of the facilities at Purdue, and did any of those explorations or techniques and so on help you to get this new role, clinical project manager at Med Institute?
So so once I started working with the larvae, I really liked, I knew that this is what I wanted to do, but I ultimately wanted to help people. And so I wasn't really sure how to cross that bridge yet from our basic research to the clinical world. At Purdue, I did get to work with lots of different facilities, and they just keep building. And there's so many amazing brand new science facilities at Purdue to do all kinds of things, amazing experiments, mass spec and RNA-seq. And then we have great animal facilities to do non-clinical research, looking at mice and all different animals. So the projects are now moving into mice in the lab, but I didn't get that far yet. But knowing they exist and being able to talk to some people from these different areas started branching out into where I wanted to go clinically. But that's the hard part, to get into clinical, to decide that late in the game that you wanted to go to clinical. People want experience to hire you.
Yes.
And so this is another don't give up story. Over 200 applications later,
Wow.
because I did not want to give up on my dream of clinical. I knew it could happen without experience. By the way, I found this job posting for Med Institute for a clinical project manager, and it was in West Lafayette, which was perfect because that was another hard part, is I was trying to stay in the Midwest, and there's not nearly as many jobs as like the East and West Coast. Right. And I saw that posting, I applied, and I got called back that same day. And I went in for an interview, and it was, again, that perfect fit. Like, I got to meet with the entire team. I never felt so comfortable. And I was like, nope, this is where I belong. And they thought the same thing. Wow. Because they made me an offer, and it's been wonderful.
Oh, yeah. So they made you an offer right there at the interview?
Later that day they did, but
Wow.
they said they felt the same way I did, that it was just a perfect fit. And I still,
Jeez.
a year later, feel the same way. I love it here.
So amazing though. So eh, job application, call to come interview the next day, and essentially an offer right there. That's awesome, Kortany. That's so speedy. It's so quick.
I'm telling you, my life is just, it's, there's somebody looking over me because there is a path
Yes.
that is being driven.
Well, and your determination and dedication, your ethic, your like, I mean, your work ethic and just like drive to continue digging. It's so wonderful. And so tell us a little bit, how was that interview? I mean, you say you felt comfortable. That must have helped you, I think, to be comfortable in your shoes during an interview. And what was that like?
So when I was first told about the interview, they said that the whole panel was going to interview me, the clinical team and the president of the company, the treasurer. So I was terrified. I was like, what do I tell these people? Like, because still the imposter syndrome just hits hard. And I walk in the room, and but then we just start talking, and it was a wonderful conversation. They were asking me about my research, and then they were fascinated, and then we just started talking science, and that's where my comfort zone is. I start geeking out and talking about everything that's cool, and that's pretty much the rest of the interview. And that's how we just knew we all just clicked, and it was gonna work out well. So.
Oh, that's awesome. And they didn't care so much about the lack of clinical expertise or experience?
They said, based on my background and everything, I can clearly be trained. So,
Yeah.
um, and that's what they did. We just kind of started from the ground up, and I am now very comfortable in the clinical world. And actually, on top of being a clinical project manager, I've also gained the titles of scientific communication scientist and a non-clinical study manager. So.
Wow, that is awesome. So what do you think have been some of the attributes of that success and gaining some of these other responsibilities?
So, Med Institute, which stands for Medical Engineering and Development, it's a small contract research organization. So companies hire us to do work for them. Our clinical team will run clinical trials anywhere from start to end or all the way through. We have engineering, who they will do testing for companies to make sure their products will pass all the regulatory requirements. And we have development. Like if somebody has an idea, we can help develop it from the ground up. So anything, even the non-clinical testing, which I'm starting to become a part of, and regulatory. So the FDA and the regulatory bodies across the world, there's lots of writing involved and requirements to meet. And that's where my scientific communications in. So I help write some of those documents. So the advantage of being a smaller company is that you can wear many hats. And that's why I love it here. Is I say I'm interested, and they're like, okay, we'll try it out. And I'm definitely in my place because I just seem to pick up everything pretty well. And so I get to work on lots of different projects and
Yes.
lots of different science. And so it's been so fascinating and so fun.
Does that keep you that variety of work, does that keep you interested and challenged and keep you learning more and more? Is that you think you're hooked on that?
Yes, that's definitely my drive. So growing up, every single day I left the house, my dad would say, learn something. And so that definitely stuck because that's my goal every day, is to learn something new. And I have a different challenge every day. And I just never thought I would find the perfect job, but I did.
That's awesome. That's so neat. And tell us a little bit about, so what would a day to day be like for you, if you can describe some of the things that when you get to work? What are some of the activities that you do? Is it mainly writing, meeting with people, and writing? How do you balance that?
So being on so many different projects, we do have lots of meetings, which is fun just to keep everybody in the loop. And what I love about here is everything is just kind of passed around to keep review and collaborate and get everybody's ideas, because we all have our different expertise, and we really take that as a strength here. And so everybody gets a little bit of input on our projects. So days will consist of, and that's another thing I can bounce from what I'm doing. So there'll be some writing and like literature searching for regulatory work, or if I'm working on a trial, I might have patient data. The big part of running the trials is to make sure patients are safe, that there isn't anything bad happening with whatever product or drug they're taking, looking at checkups and seeing all that. And so that's kind of like I get to play detective and look at all of this data and make sure everything's running smoothly. Mm-hmm. And my role in non-clinical is going to be with project consulting. So I love that as well. So I get to look at these protocol developments and determine if there's better ways to do these, is it missing something, anything like that. So yeah, lots of meetings, some writing, and some of it will even be travel to going to clinical sites and making sure everything is in order and all the paperwork is right. And so it's a lot of different stuff going on.
Yeah, a lot, and juggling quite a bit, huh? Do you get to go to conferences too? Is that still part of it?
Yes, conferences are part of it. So being a CRO, our money is by companies hiring us, and so we go to conferences and present what we are able to do, and also clients can hire us to present their work or help them with presenting their work, or sometimes clients will have experiments ran here and they'll have us present that work.
Nice.
So yes,
nice.
yeah.
And so, and tell us a little bit about you described your time in academia as being very much a supportive group, and even your time at Applebee's too, that had your back many times. How is this group at Med Institute? And tell us, I mean, it sounds wonderful, because you do seem to have quite a few responsibilities that keep you motivated to interact probably with several of these people. But tell us a little bit about the culture and what's it like.
So here it's wonderful as well. So actually in grad school, I met my now husband, and we actually had 2 more little girls. So
congratulations.
Yeah, so 4 girls at home. So everybody here knows that my plate is full, but they love it. Then they, we all chat, we all take daily walks and talk about our lives with each other. And again, we all have these different ways we think, and we appreciate that from each other so much. So when we sit and brainstorm, it's just this beautiful mix. And we have a wonderful work life, and then we also discuss our family life. And
so good balance again. It seems like a good support network as well. What about some of the things that you've learned new? I mean, you said you had to do some training to get into the clinical project management type of world. How is that? How has that training been, and how different has that been from training that you've already received previously?
So clinical in this world, it's lots of rules. So we're governed by regulatory bodies and standards. There's international standards and international rules and national rules. And so just learning them all. And there's tons and tons and tons. So it's just been a process, and learning them all. And so I just train when I can. And the more that I'm involved, the more I learn. And that's pretty much the biggest reason why people, when you go into clinical, they want you to have experience, because there's so much to learn. But what I was taught, and I think I was taught very well in graduate school, is how to be an independent thinker and how to be an independent learner. And so that's been so helpful, because to pick up these, and really once you get there, it makes sense. It's all about, boils down to patient safety and making good products and stuff like that. So
and these rules are there to help us, right? Keep people as safe as we can, and cause no harm. Kortany, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wish I would have asked you?
Let me think. Oh, if I could just say that my teaching at Purdue, that I ended up teaching for 11 semesters, and that was one of the most valuable experiences I had. I got to be a part of a lot of people's lives and helping them learn and overcome obstacles. So that was a pleasure, and that's probably the one thing in my life I miss is teaching.
And would you seek some opportunities at Med Institute to do some teaching?
So we do get a mentor here. So we'll have interns and new workers and stuff come in. So I still get that mentoring aspect. I have thought about in the future maybe looking into teaching like a class on the outside or something.
Yes. Yes.
Because I do. I absolutely love teaching, and I might have stayed in the academic world if I was a little younger when I went in and didn't have all my little kids running around, but
yes, yeah,
time was of the essence, and I'm extremely happy where I am. But I do miss teaching some stuff.
Well, you've taught us so much today by revealing so much of your life and your life's journey. I want to thank you so much for. I hope I've been a good student, and I will take lessons that I've learned today, and I will use them. There were so many tidbits of great insight that you gave us, because you went through a lot of these things, and you've gone through a lot of living and life that also taught you so much. And I thank you for just letting us follow you along in this journey and leading us down this path so that we can also learn from your lessons. And Kortany, I am so in awe of all of your accomplishments. I can see why people are so interested in working with you and the elements of your success, and your confidence in being able to continue moving forward. I know you spoke a lot about not having some of that confidence, especially as you were starting back at school again or starting grad school, but you persevered by conquering that courage and picking up the confidence. And it's remarkable, just remarkable to see you where you are. Dr. Kortany Baker, Clinical Project Manager at Med Institute here in West Lafayette. Thank you for being our Pathfinder today.
You're very welcome. I'm absolutely honored.
No, this was great. The honor was all ours. So thank you. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us once again, and remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.